So the title of this talk is Gentoo EAPI 5, and it could alias it as Gentoo bike shedding or whatever. Who am I? My name is Petteri Räty. I'm a Gentoo dev since 05. Council dev recruiting. So basically, sit in the board that makes technical decisions in Gentoo. So the idea behind this talk was to collect devs for the dinner afterwards. So I don't know. Let's see how many devs we have now. Largest, no, at least one in there. There we have a group there. Some more. So quite a few. Good. The Andreas wasn't listening, so. But Vilfrich. So the question was how many Gentoo devs we have in the room, and we had hands popping up around the room. So what I did for the talk was added some basic information on the API. How many of you know ebuilds, the file format? Most, but not all. So ebuilds is the packaging format for Gentoo, and feel free to ask questions at any point because some of the items probably need more background than what I have on the slide. So I'll explain them more. Yeah. The question was, will there be any way to have official bin hosts for Gentoo packages? There actually already is binary packages in Tinderbox. Who knows the exact role? Tinderbox something.gentoo.org that you can use to rescue your system, but. So people want SSL on it. Yeah, I'm repeating the question now. The question was, could we get SSL on the Tinderbox URL? You would just have you opened the bug request? But yeah, open a bug to the Gentoo infra product, or I think that it will do it. And I'm quite sure they'll be happy to add it if it's not there already. And of course, do we have Fabio here? Herculeani? No. He does more binary stuff from Portage, so he would have known more. But I don't know, infrastructure blast. The problem with binary packages is that unless you want to build for all the use flag combinations, you're always going to be tied to a single pre-selected set. So. Do we have the other mic? Sorry. Sorry, is the other mic working? Okay, so then we can get that discussion recorded live. So I think the summary is that if you take away use flags and compile the binaries, why aren't you using Debian?
the question was to have a point in the middle, because e-builds are great. They are far better from specs and devs by far. You have several options that you cannot implement in any way on other package management system. But the thing that is maybe refraining users is the time of compiling and the build time in global. So maybe if having something quite intermediate between using binaries that correspond in 90% of the case to the specific hardware that is on the client side, plus having the right to compile and feeling free to compile. That doesn't work with Android and with the ARM architecture, of course.
I think if you have any people here who do releases, I think the releases used to come with binary packages that you could install.
Stage 3, yes, of course, but I mean, having by default portage bin hosts for almost all the cases, meaning, I don't know, you have people who have ATI, NVIDIA, Intel architecture, and AMD. That makes quite a lot of simplification, and that can save a lot of compile time. Is it on the roadmap of Gentoo, or?
I think it's a resource-intensive effort besides automatic cinderboxing. So I don't think I'm not aware of anyone actively working on it to a big degree, unless anyone there has a. You have a comment, you're working on it? So we have, when will it be ready? Okay. Is there another comment? Yeah.
Actually, I think instead of having some common set of binary packages, it would be much more useful to have easy way to configure a bin host for periodic rebuilds and have custom stage 4s with binary packages and so on. And I'm working on this as a side project because I want it and I need it. And I have run into a few problems with testing packages, not really building, and yeah, but I think this is really not the issue is not about having official Gentoo packages, but making some binary packages readily available. There was Vida Linux, maybe it's still alive. There is Ceberon if you want desktop distro easily installed easily and have Gentoo, which, or at least you can use it as a Gentoo bootstrapper. But it's true there is nothing of such a type for servers, and I think it's a bit lacking for easy installation of servers or anything on the server side. So I think a tool for easy building of the stage 4s and binary packages. I've tried Catalyst, I've tried Metro, and it didn't really get the job done well for me, because I want really specially tailored stage 4s, and they didn't step out of the limitations of the basic release. But I'm going off topic with this.
Yeah, all of it.
So, but the idea is to have a good tool for creating bin hosts.
Fabio arrived. There was a question here. Will Gentoo have officially blessed binary hosts? I don't know if you have anything to say on the topic, as you're interested in binary packages more than I am. There's a...
I didn't hear the question from the beginning, so could you try to summarize it?
There was a request, will we have a blessed binary package repositories in Gentoo?
If we have it?
Oh no, is it on the roadmap?
Oh.
But you've done some work on binary packages, but
Yeah.
not enough repo-wise, but portage-wise.
I actually didn't get the question right. So what's the actual question?
The question is from there, from next year, but
Yeah.
on the same row there. No, this guy.
My main purpose was to have more, let's say, more newbies come to Gentoo. That was why I was asking the question and why I was proposing it. And by the way, I find that this guy's idea is better than mine, because you can select at which stage you can have a package installed, and that can be a very great idea, in fact. So that the only purpose of this question was to have the community come back to Gentoo, and especially newbies who wanted to work, even if we don't want them.
Now Fabio is itching for the...
Well, I think that a good path to come to Gentoo is actually try to use Sabayon, which is the easy version of Gentoo, which is its purpose is actually to catch newbies, catch users from Ubuntu or Arch or whatever distro, and yeah, catch. And bring them to a Gentoo-based system. And actually, the next step would be for the user, if one wants to know more how a system can be configured, etc., could easily from Sabayon get to a real Gentoo system, actually. So the path for newbies, I think, in my opinion, is to try Sabayon distribution, which is completely 100% compatible with Gentoo. Stick with it for a while, know how the portage system works, etc., and then make the jump if one wants. And I think that's the way to do it, in my opinion. And with Sabayon, you get binary packages. So if you just want to get a system up and running, you just need to install Sabayon and be happy.
Okay, I think that's...
Did I answer your question? Okay.
There's always, with newbies and Gentoo, there's always the question that Gentoo doesn't want to attract the first-time Linux users unless they're really involved in getting to know, as it's they don't get from out of Gentoo what they probably would have gotten from Ubuntu as
I think if you see it as ISO OZ stack, Gentoo is at level 3 and we are at level 4. So if you just want to go down and implement your stuff, just go down level 3 and have fun with UDP or whatever.
So coming back to the topic of EAPIs, the history-wise, we've been cranking them out pretty much one per year. I don't know what. It is time for the next one, so that's why I wanted to do the talk. And EAPI 1, I don't know the year number. It wasn't in the tag, so but sometime before that. So why is it a bit slow? Portage, the main package manager, is takes a while to implement new features, and of course it can take time to pick the color for the shed. For example, a long discussion about should we add the EAPI, the number to the file name at the end, was going for quite a while, and never. It went quite close to in the end of tie votes, and since then it's been pending. So to actual features, what I did, I went through the in the box.gentoo.org under the product Gentoo hosted projects and the component PMS /EAPI. You can find ideas floating around to be implemented in EAPIs. So what I did was go through the list and pick some interesting ideas or things that I would find useful to be on the slides, and so we can discuss, and all the devs who don't agree with the ideas can shoot them down. And then at the end, if you have any more ideas besides these, then we can discuss those from the audience. So what I would personally like the most is Xerbo, I think, does this already, but to get rid of the, currently there are two variables, build time, well, actually three, but two main variables, build time depend and rdepend for runtime dependencies, and then special circular dependency breaker called pdepend, postdepends. So what the discussion is that to have them in a single variable and in a more defined way. Currently, if you look at the spec, package manager specification, on how the dependents are defined, it's very, it's not really clear because of the historical way and Portage works. I would want to separate them to a more granular level and specify them that way. But I think there are people who object to this method. Are there one of those people in the audience? Not today, good. So I can say that everyone here supported that idea. So what happens currently is that with binary packages you use rdepend, but if you have some, for example, what a benefit I could think of is that if you use something only in package post install, you would have to put it to rdepend because the binary packages are running that step, but even though you don't need it at runtime. Export functions. Any people here who have written E-classes? Do you agree with the assessment that export functions is totally unnecessary? It is a way to list in the file that which functions the E-class has. So that could be just basically automatic and removed. No objections, good. So when writing, what happens when you use ebuilds is that there's steps. Basically, if you the traditional configure, make install, there's for ebuilds there's matching steps and a bit more. Unpack, prepare, configure, compile, install for the source. So in the E-classes you can provide defaults, and then if you don't want to use those defaults in the ebuilds, you have the you can specify your own. But truly, there's no way in the E-class to tell that I want this at source configure time. I want this E-class function to be always run. Some people make the argument that ebuilds themselves should then just be calling that E-class function, but at least with Java classes and those that have needs for this, I find that it's very hard to remember to do it and kind of hard to automatically catch unless you set up a lot of infrastructure. So why not have the package manager take care of it? That is well, at least my common use case doesn't matter because there's they tend to be more like checks, but so that's the time for bike shedding. I'm just gonna get the mic.
Typical worst case if you have an ebuild for language bindings that is a KDE package. You want to call the E-class for the language, which is something like Java E-class or whatever, and you also want to use the KDE E-classes, and then you end up with wanting to call well, KDE4 base package setup and Java package setup, and then you don't know in which order, and then you don't know how they interact with each other. So, and this needs some careful preparation. But it's definitely a very good idea that they are called automatically somehow. It just needs to have a clear algorithm.
Yeah, it could get a bit that you specify. If you want, you could have both pre and after versions. But the need is to, at least the problem I'm trying to solve here is that there's some QA and those kind of actions that they are not dependent on the order. So for that reason, for that use doesn't matter which order they're running. But for the general solution, yeah, true. Are all good upstreams? All the upstreams release source code, and it's always easy to package, right? In that bug, there's a discussion that if you want to, if you need to create the file that's get distributed on the servers, what currently happens is that people maintain their own scripts somewhere. For example, we provide binary packages for OpenJDK just because it takes a lot of memory and time to compile on LibreOffice 2 and things like that. But to package you could, for example, use this to have the steps to create the binary package for those special occasions. Then in the bug you find the discussion about more generally starting to have more maintainer only phases in ebuilds. I don't know if it was Spanky or who was suggesting it, but that we could move QA checks to maintainer specific functions to reduce the noise from users. That's probably controversial, but that is also a part of the discussion in that bug. Any devs here who would have use for this kind of stuff?
Sure. The best application is oxygen icons, because we always repack it because nobody in Gentoo has ever used for the scalable SVG icons. So, I mean, the tar file that you download from the KDE servers is somewhere around 350 megabytes or so, and we end up with a 25 megabyte file.
Have you, but upstream can strip it down?
Upstream can, but refuses to do because they say it's a licensing issue. We only strip it down if it's not with the use flag bin package set.
Next item I found was to move description to metadata XML. There in ebuild package directories, you have this XML file having package level metadata, and then you have the individual ebuild files that have ebuild specific metadata, which includes the variable description. So Fabio might know, but I'm not really sure which version of the description port it uses when it tries to show you the package description. I'm assuming it might be the latest, but yeah, the answer was he asked the API and he doesn't know what it does under the hood. At least from my perspective, the package should have only one description by default in a single place. But then there comes to discussion that is there a use case for having version-specific descriptions that would need to be shown at all? Maybe slot-specific if there's a new major version. Diego, you could get Andreas, can you pass the mic?
There is some use case for that, but we have a solution for that as well. Metadata has a restrict keyword that we can use to restrict the description to a particular version or slot or subset of versions, so shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, the question was more, should we allow that at all, or just have one description?
We have used it before, especially between slots of the same package, because sometimes the content of a package changes so drastically between slots, but you don't have the same software almost. So yeah, but we have solved that already some time ago.
But you don't need the description to install it, though. Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. I haven't considered that. Well, in general, it is that a package is a set of evals. So ideally, of course, they don't live that long in the Bugzilla. But Fabio, so
we also have the long description tag, I guess, in metadata XML already. So what's the point in having one kind of description in metadata and another kind of description in the e-build? Doesn't make sense.
We do, but of course we do need a short and a long one.
Yeah, sure. That for sure, but not in different places actually.
That's the point. The point is to remove the one.
Yeah, I am for removing it.
Yeah, but as far as
I'm for moving actually for moving description to metadata. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So let's move the long description to the A-build also.
Given I was the one proposing the addition of description to metadata from use description, actually, that's another thing that moved from another file, the use local file, to the metadata XML, and I've been pressing for this to happen for quite a bit. Metadata.xml that doesn't have only core information, they have a lot of user-facing information, like the use descriptions. So it makes sense to keep using that for user information as well. And since it's XML, the package manager can simply handle it for the user and show it to the user transparently. There shouldn't be any reason why the package manager handles the description in the build file itself differently from the data from the metadata. So it doesn't make sense to have two from the point of sight of what you commit. And decreasing the size of a build is also always a nice thing because rsync is slow.
Can you get the mic to ask a question?
I'm gonna fall back to taxonomy because metadata means described data, so description must go there. That's all. That's my humble point of view.
So there's another. Yeah.
So why only moving the description and not also the homepage? Because it's similar. Okay.
Assuming upstream homepage doesn't change every release, so hopefully at least. What would be? It could, but then again, we can use that metadata options. You have the home data version specific, but I would it wouldn't be my first choice. My first choice would be the invent the famous device to stab people over the internet and find upstream. Who's ever worked on an e-build that has a zip file and forgot to depend on AppArt's unzip? Only a couple people. I mean, so one way or another, I would love to see a way to do that automatically. I've seen. Do we have anyone here who has read the recent stuff on Gentoo Dev, the e-class that's been written for this? So maybe you want to summarize, Andreas, that? No? Oh, it's going to get...
I just hope that whatever they're doing is going to also support exotic stuff, because it's always getting annoying when you have a 7-zip archive on ISO or whatever.
Sorry?
Isn't it better to settle once and for all that the unpacker is either gzip or bzip2?
Well, tell that to upstreams who distribute zips.
That was my humble point of view.
I would have no objections there, but I don't see it happening. We do have packages that the source file is RPM or .deb or expecting a zip file. Exif. SH, yeah. Sorry? Scott, hear that.
The old JDK had the self-extracting file as well.
Yeah, but I think
Very
you
old.
unpack something first and then run that from the resulting file.
And then extract again.
How would you implement the detection of the unpacker during the pre-configure of the build?
Well, for the most cases, I would imagine that there's a file suffix that if it's a .zip, it's not a BZ2 file or whatever. And you can always fall back on doing things manually. If it's a zip file that is actually a 7-zip or whatever, then you would just depend on that and unpack it yourself manually in source unpack. But the common use case is that it's tar.bc2. Well, that doesn't actually require anything, but .zips are unpacked with unzip, and so you can map it based on the file name. And if it doesn't work for you, then tell package manager manually what you need.
I wouldn't rely on the file extension only. Yes, absolutely. Maybe you can include it in the build.
If you rely on magic numbers to calculate the dependencies, you would have to download all the files of the whole dependency tree and take a look.
Yeah.
So you would have generated dependency information coming with the tree.
Or how about just adding QA check on repoman instead, that detects the source file and tries to search through the dependencies if there are missing dependencies for that zip file.
There is actually at least was a check for that. I don't know if it was repoman or pcheck or the publish tool that got eventually removed. Okay, so repoman is the one.
We don't want to just check.
That's what I was going to propose myself as a fallback. If the extensions can be relied upon, usually the developer knows what, so we can just override it with a specific format. That's just about it.
The root of the problem is is that developers aren't perfect and they forget to say that information. What is the unpacker? Well, why make it a mandatory field if it's if we can do without it? So just to tell that in each new rebuild, you would have to start telling people that this needs to be unpacked with tar for the normal case.
It's just about trying to make it convenient and safe at the same time. So a default taken from the archive extension and then overridable by the developer if it's not reliable should be covering most of the cases.
And there's usually also the case that if you make the simplest e-builds work as best as possible, then normal users are able to come up with usable stuff themselves for their own use. If there's plenty of magic variables to define and things like that, it makes it harder for them to write their own stuff.
Do you need at some point to separate the archiver from the compressor?
Well, it's already done. It's for zip files. It's different package that has the compressor and different package that has the unpacker.
Yeah, but I mean when you have twice at the same time, tar BZ, tar
Yeah.
GZ, for example, maybe we might need to have both of the information to prevent developers from telling my cleaver is just tar or AR, for example.
But if it's tar.bc2 or tar.bc, it's still the same
You
package.
put in the e-build,
Yeah.
archiver tar, compressor BZ2, and those two fields could be mandatory, should be mandatory at the time we build it.
In e-builds, in the source URI variable, which tells the file.
Yeah, sorry guys. What if your developer says it's a TBZ? And the TBZ2.
Yeah, in EAPI 2, you can specify the automatic renaming of file when it's downloaded from upstream servers to something else. So if there's an unknown suffix, your solution can be implemented by just renaming it to a file convention that the package manager already understands. And then we don't need to have additional variables that are always mandatory for that purpose. Yeah. So to summarize, he was saying that the E-class will handle 99% of the cases, and leave the rest to the E-belts to override. So
I just have one little feature request, but I'm going to write that also in the bug or in the discussion somewhere, namely that we can hook into the automatics somewhere in the e-build for, let's just say, pathological cases, like a driver package where you download an ISO, which contains a target zip, which contains a couple of RPMs. Yeah, it happens.
That's why I was suggesting
yeah. No, Gentoo developers are lazy, so they don't like new mandatory flags. It's kind of not going to be popular. Unfortunately, we don't have a benevolent dictator anymore.
I have a different feature request regarding file collision handling. Often I have the problem, especially in the unstable arc, after successfully compiling a package. After that, I get a file collision detection, and that prevents the installing of this successfully built package. And so you have to clean the file collisions by hand. Can we implement a feature into the EAPI 5 which offers a switch, like, do you want to override the file collisions, yes or not, or something like this, to solve it?
Yeah, would be a portage feature. As for the collisions, if they are files that are there but have no other package owning them, it has been switched to. It's not prevent collision. It's
yeah, portage these days only warns if something else doesn't own the files.
There's two features. One still stops. Make.conf. On make.conf there is yeah, two different features. One stops for any collision, and the other only if the collision is with another package, where there should be a blocker in the package. But half the time there isn't one.
It's one of the bigger downfalls of the building from source approach, is that no one maintains a central repository, or at least a blessed repository of files installed by eBelts. And as they change by use flags, it would be an interesting effort anyway.
And since it takes about 6 weeks to rebuild the whole tree, it's difficult to test it out.
Have you, by the way, side question, Diego, have you managed to build the whole tree?
Whole tree? No. It's about, last time I checked, 11,000 builds, 10,000 built fine, over 10,000 started either blocking each other, and then colliding, blocking, not correctly functioning. So no, the whole tree I have never been able to build. There are lots of blockers, so you can actually install all the tree, but even trying to build all the tree is not feasible right now. The whole tree, no.
So there's Fabio had something in common.
I've been able to build actually 13,000 packages from Portage. So it's kind of fun when you have to rebuild packages. I think 15,000, but I didn't count the multiple versions of the builds. So I just built for one version for each slot. I think we are at 30,000 files. Yeah.
Klondike, did you have a comment? Can you get the mics?
How can you try to build the complete tree if there are packages that depend on other packages not being there?
Packages depending on something not in the main tree? Blockers, yeah. Well, isn't the approach that you need to unmerge something and then continue with the other set?
As for the Tinderbox, that installs the packages, doesn't just build them. The Tinderbox tries to unmerge the packages that are collating unless they are part of the system or of the subset of file of system packages of non-system packages that the Tinderbox needs to run, and it usually works fine. There are situations where the presence of a given package can lose everything. I have the problem with RPM, for instance, and there are problems with MariaDB versus MySQL. It is tricky, very tricky, and that's why the Tinderbox will never be able to target the whole tree, just a subset. And as it happens, I have old stats since I last time checked out 11,000 packages in Gentoo. There are more now, so I have to do the stats from scratch. There will never be a whole tree installed on the system. There can be a whole tree package tree, because you can build binary packages for everything as long as you remove and re-add the packages over time, but you can't install it all together.
This can be necessary for someone who wants, who needs to have a portage bin hosts, private portage bin host with all the package rebuild. That's I think that's one of the only cases where it can be used.
That's still feasible, because you can build binary packages of everything as long as you unmerge some of the blocked dependencies, but you can't install on the same file system everything on the same root. That can't be done. But you can build file collisions, blockers, and sometimes even just the presence of a header file that is the same name of the file inside the package and has colliding. Yeah, there is tons of corner cases.
Sorry? 5 minutes? Okay, cool. This I picked up in latest additions in EAPI 4. Is that there are operators for the sets, but for the practical use, just have one of question mark for the group to signal 0 or 1 from Ulrich Müller. Probably not controversial, I hope. Who wants an ice cream machine? Good, one. So, any important ideas or things that you would like to see that I didn't cover in here? And if there are those, just let's make sure they end up in Bugzilla.
Please, can you tell me the status of signing of manifest files?
Status of signing manifest files. Who would have a good answer here? You can sign them, but it's not mandatory, and the CLEPs have been approved. It's waiting for someone to write some pieces of code to have all the infrastructure. Dilfrich has it. Yeah, can we get the mic coming back down?
I'm not really the ultimate expert, but I think this mainly depends on how whatever JIT migration will ever happen will turn out, or is coupled at least to that question. because I mean the manifest scheme will change with that probably. There will be also commit signing, and just in the very newest JIT release, there's now upstream support of commit signing. So it's not push signing, but commit signing. I guess that will influence whatever happens to the manifest signing as well, and it's not really decided yet. At least that's what I know.
And also, you can already get signed trees from infrastructure. The snapshots are signed, and they come from CVS, and that's authenticated. So if you want to get a signed tree, it's already possible. Just don't use rsync. Oh, it works again.
Yeah, it's very nice to have signed snapshots, but it's something troublesome because there's no way to really check it on the new install, because there's no GPG on the stage 3.
Yeah, that is annoying. But then again, it comes a question of how do you verify the install media?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but if you trust the web server, why don't you trust the keys that for the snapshots then? So yeah, the solution must have been outside there.
Actually, I'm not sure. Is there? I guess there is no GPG on the minimal media either. Is there?
I don't know. I'd rather use them. There is? Yeah, but it's signed, but does it have the keys on the media?
It might be nice to have release or bootable media with pre-installed keys.
A file a bug to release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From what I understand, we are only based on MD5 sums.
No, that was.
There is no signing process. I mean, from scratch, from the CD install to the effective deployment of the packages, before having to install GPG during the install process.
Can you get the mic?
So Relang should have the SHA SAM as well as the MD5 on everything, so we are not limited to MD5. But no, as far as I can tell, there isn't GNU PG on either the install media or the stage. But should probably be fixed when we implement the full synod tree. Right now, it's a bit of a mess. There isn't another word to describe it.
Well, what usually happens in Gentoo release is that as most devs are running their rolling stuff, it's not the most pressing issue.
Yeah, I can't tell for sure about the install media because last time I had to use the Gentoo install media was probably a very long time ago. So.
Yeah, but I mean, it still makes sense to tackle that at some point because I mean, on an open wireless LAN, I don't actually like to run emerge sync. I mean,
any other finishing questions before we start?
I thought everybody installed from sysrescue CD anyway.
I do. I do for sure.
Yeah.
Sorry? I haven't been able to boot it with API. EFI. No, I haven't been able to. But
Yeah, the comment was that he uses Ubuntu because it boots better from EFI. Okay. Thanks, everyone.